Okay, so now that we have our solve, let's go ahead and grab our footage, bring our inference over here, and let's take a look. All right, so if we look at our inference and step through it, we got ourselves a girl with a scar that's moving through the footage. And it's doing pretty good. But let's actually examine this a little bit better. Let's go to our frame 1, where she's most in focus, and really, really examine it. Okay? So here's the result of our inference, our default. Let's go over here and grab our painted frame. And as you can see, the scar has a lot more detail in there. Okay? Versus our result. That doesn't fly. We need that detail. So how are we going to get that detail? Well, that's where we're going to start learning about all this stuff over here. So let's go ahead and delete this. Let me explain to you exactly what this stuff is and how it works. Epochs. Think of this as sampling. Okay, if you're in 3D, if you're familiar with 3D, think of it as like anti-alias sampling or number of light rays. The more you have of those numbers, the better it's going to be, but it's expensive on your render time. For compers, think of it as the sampling for motion blur. If you have a lot more samples for your motion blur, it's going to, again, drag down your comp, but it's also going to look really, really cool when it goes through motion blur. So that's essentially what this is. So as you increase this, better it's going to look, but it's going to cost you some time. All right. And believe me, this will cost you a lot of time. Okay, so let's go ahead and initial weights. Initial weights we're going to go ahead and ignore for now. We really can't use them for this yet, but I'll explain what the checkpoint is in a moment. Deblur and upscale, they will be their own tutorial, because with this technique, you can actually deblur things. It helps out making sure you can get more detail back in a blurry image. I honestly have never used it in production, so I can't contest to it. Upscaling, again, I haven't used this one yet myself in production. I'm so used to using ITV for upscaling, but this is apparently Nuke's answer to Topaz's upscaling, AI software that they have. Human matting. We will be using this once on the next tutorial. This is actually pretty good. But let's go ahead and skip this for now. We'll discuss that later. Model size. All right. Medium is the default. Okay. So the best way to describe model size is think of an IMAX image, okay, versus a HD image, okay. An IMAX EXR file is going to give you some really nice detail when you zoom in like this, okay? And when you're keying with an IMAX or EXR files at 16-bit, you're going to get some nice keys out of it. As opposed to, let's say, a HD footage that you get from your phone that has JPEG artifacting in it, and you try keying with that or tracking with that, you're not going to get as quality of a result as you would with, the IMAX EXR file. That's this analogy right here, okay? So when you're doing beauty work like this, I would recommend large, okay? You want to pull as much detail out of it as you can, all right? It doesn't care about the size. What I was describing was an analogy. It doesn't actually mean your image size. This is, it's just an analogy. So it'll take a small sampling versus a large sampling of your image. So when you're doing beauty work, you definitely want to be on large, okay? Roto work, you could probably even go to small, because you're just dealing with two colors, black and white. But default is medium. Batch size, you should never have to mess with this, ever, theoretically, okay? But what this is your batch size. It's based off of your data sets, okay? General rule of thumb, you do not want this number to go any more than your data set. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would never want to put this to 6. That it'll just it'll freak out, okay? So it's 5 or below, all right? 4, 3, or 2, whatever, all right? When it's on auto, copycat counts how many data inputs you have and try to figure out the best solution for you. It says it's 4, okay? All right. If I want to set it to 5, I can do that. But I'm just going to let copycat fix that for me. Okay, crop size. As mentioned before in the tracking marker removal, those are those boxes that get selected randomly, and they get put down here in that corner, whereas the 3 columns of the input, ground truth, and then the result. Okay, and so it's basically giving you that information. That's what that is. It's the crop size, that box size. So here's the thing. If we look at our crop that we put on here, oops, okay, we are at 476 by 682. Suppose we're going to play Let's Pretend. All right, we come in here, and instead of cropping that, we're going to crop even closer. There we go. All right, so our new size is 193 by 256. Okay, so we look at our crop size here. All right, well, 256 is fine, but 193, that we don't get enough to cover that. So we have to go down to 128. So these two numbers have to be bigger than your crop size. Okay, so 256 would not work. It'd work for this number, but 193 is smaller. So we'd have to set that to 128, and then we could go ahead and do our thing. Just go set that back, delete this. Now, if you do the full frame, let's suppose we tried to solve for the full frame. In theory, you could put it to 512 and get a bigger sample size. But just like anything else, the more you increase something, the more time it's going to take to solve. Okay, 256 is a good number just to leave, but if you want to get more detail, you can try bumping that up. All right, checkpoint intervals and contact sheet intervals. This is by far less important than this is. This is actually more important. And so let's go ahead and go into our folder full of stuff here. Okay, so this is our cat folder that we saved into. Okay, and by default, it looks like this. It's just a bunch of stuff. Okay, the PNG images, I'm not sure why we need those because they don't actually show anything. I mean, if you open up one, it's pretty much all blank. So it's pretty much nothing there. But that's not really what's important. What's really important are these cat files, these catalog files. Okay, this is what we really need to keep in track of. So our epoch was set to 10,000. Okay, and so that's our last one, and that's what's being used right now, 10,000. So every 1,000, it creates a new cat file, starting with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, all the way up to 10,000. Okay? Now, why is these important? Well, let's suppose we can actually choose any one of those. Inference. Okay, let's grab an inference and just pick a different cat file. All right, and see what it looks like. Let's go low, really, really low, like the first 1,000 cat file, or 10,000. Oops, wrong one. First 1,000, there we go. So let's grab the first 1,000 cat file and look through it. As you can see, it hasn't figured out the solution yet. So let's continue moving on to another cat file. Let's go up to about 6,000. Okay? At 6,000, it's slowly starting to learn. So you can start getting a little piece there. And as it goes up and up and up to, say, there, now we're starting to see something. All right, so basically, once you've solved and you want to back this project up, the only thing you really need to save is your last cat file. They do encourage you to check other cat files to make sure it is exactly what you want, but 9 times out of 10, it's your last cat file that will give you the result that you need. Now, knowing all this information, let's come back here. Knowing all this information, what do we do with it? How do we get better results? Well, the first thing I would do is switch this to large, okay? Knowing that this is a beauty thing. But not knowing this is a beauty thing, first thing I would do is start bumping this sucker up, okay? Now, I'm not going to do it here because it does take a while to compute. So, but I already did do it before, and so I'm sending you guys this file here, which will have the proper cat files. So the epochs, so here's our default at 10,000, all right? I went down to 5,000 just to see what it looked like. And I also put frame 001 of the data set here to compare to. So if we compare this to the 5,000, let that load in, it definitely does not work, okay? Let's take a look at the default. See, we're getting a little bit more detail in there. So the 5,000, the 10,000, so you get a little bit more in there. And then we put 40,000 in here. As you can see, we got a little bit more, but if we compare it to our data set, still not enough in there, okay? And then this one, I went crazy. I went 60,000 epochs with a large model size, and that would be, this, setting this to large. Okay, large model size, and there we go. Look at that. It actually looks like our data set. Okay, so again, that's what all that means in the settings. So when you're doing yours and it's not looking like you want it to, this is the first thing you want to mess with. Increase that, and then if things are still not looking right, start messing with this. You should not have to mess with any of these down here, okay, because that really doesn't help with your solution. This might, by bumping it to 512, but you're going to run out of memory. You run the risk of running out of memory. But for the most part, just mess around with these, and you should be good to go.